Domestic abuse is a pattern of behaviors used by one partner to maintain power and control in an intimate relationship. Domestic violence does not discriminate. Anyone of any race, age, sexual orientation, religion, or gender can be a victim or perpetrator of domestic violence. It can happen to people who are married, living together, or who are dating. It affects people of all socioeconomic backgrounds and education levels. It affects private folks and those folks who have more public lives, like news anchors. Our own Dee Griffin got out of an abusive marriage for fear of her infant son as much as herself. She bravely shares her story with others now as a speaker and victims advocate.
I saw a couple arguing in a parking lot last week, and it brought back memories. When I was 7 months pregnant, he did push me during an argument. I called a cousin back home in Georgia, and he encouraged me to leave. By telling my truth, I help others, but I continue to help myself and realize it was not my fault.
And I'm so honored to have Dee Griffin joining me now, because Dee, I know that this is a very personal story for you. And it's a story that you kept quiet
For a while.
And you know, it's because nobody would suspect it.
Nope.
The package looks so perfect on the outside.
And the embarrassment. You know, I had just gotten married, and then I don't even know what it feels like to celebrate a first wedding anniversary, because about 10 and a half months after getting married, I had to move back home here to Augusta because my ex-husband had abused me so badly. And my son at that point was 5 weeks old, and I didn't want him to grow up like that. But also, I was the average victim. The average victim goes back 7 times before making that final step to leave. And I had left, I think it was 3 times. And so I was the average victim.
When you say you didn't make it to your first wedding anniversary, was there violence throughout your relationship?
No.
Or was once he put a ring on it, then the violence started?
Pretty much. We got engaged in Massachusetts and Boston, and everything was just beautiful, romantic, planning the wedding. But the night before, while we were here in Augusta preparing for the wedding, I was waiting for a wedding gift for him. I was going to present it at the rehearsal dinner, and the gift did not arrive on time, and so I missed the rehearsal because I was waiting for the gift. He called and just went off on me, and it sent chills through me, and I just burst in tears. Friends were calling me, "Where are you?" And I told them what happened. They said, "Oh, it's just pre-wedding jitters and everything's okay. You guys love each other." He was calling saying, "No, we've got to go through this. Let's, you know, we're going to work on this. We're going to be okay." So I finally went through the wedding rehearsal dinner, gave him the gift, and I thought everything was okay. But one friend, when I walked in, one of my best friends, she says, "Do you remember what you told me that night?" I said, "No." She says, "I feel like I'm trapped in a movie and can't get out." And she said, "I figured something was really, really wrong within. You felt something." But I went ahead and went through the marriage and the wedding. We got married at the beginning of August, and then the end of August, I was pregnant. And, you know, little, honeymoon somewhere along, baby. But he convinced me to leave my job and move up to be with him. So in November.
Because you were an anchor at that time.
Right, in Memphis, Tennessee. And I moved to be with him in Boston, Massachusetts, and that was November. So I moved in like November 1st or 5th, the 5th or the 6th. By the end of November, I was living at a Marriott because we had had our first big blow up, and he called me the N-word. He got in my face and he called me the N-word. I had never been called that before.
You're pregnant at this
newly
point?
pregnant. Newly pregnant, almost 3 months at that point. And it just didn't feel right. And so I got out of there. I didn't know why I wanted to leave. And I'm not a confrontational kind of person, but also I was afraid. So I got out of there and I went to my car and I was driving around and I called a friend in Atlanta, and he said, "This is not good." And he said, "You can't drive around all night. What are you going to do? I don't want you to go back there." And he said, I didn't have any answers. So he said, "Go to a hotel." And so I did. And so I went to a hotel and called a couple friends, talked to them, talked to family members, and then I called my ex-husband the next day, and he came, and we had a heated discussion. But then,
you're now ex-husband.
Right,
he was your husband at the time.
And we had a heated discussion and everything, but I did go back like the typical average.
So is he just
victim.
apologizing and saying it'll never happen again?
Well, at first it was like, it was your fault, you shouldn't have done this, and you know, but then it was, okay, I need my family to be together, you need to come on home, we can work this out, I'm sorry. The tears, the sobbing, the, you know, this is all new for us, and you know, we dated long distance the whole time, and so we're getting used to each other, and so it's like, okay, fine. So I went on back home.
What was the final straw? You had a baby at this point.
Right. You know, throughout the relationship, there were, you know, hills and valleys, hills and valleys. I lived for the hills, but I dreaded the valleys. I knew they were coming. But the final straw, Pierce was 5 weeks old, and my mom had left. His mother was coming, and before my mom arrived, I was cleaning and doing all the things that a Southern woman does to prepare for her Southern mom to come visit. Right. And so I was cleaning, and so he wanted to do the same thing. He didn't talk to me about it, of course. So that morning, Friday, June 17th, I believe it was, I got up to feed the baby, and I put the baby down, and I saw him, and he was picking lint off the sofa and looking around like, what else do I do? He didn't clean. I was the cleaner. So I was like, well, you need some help? He was like, no, no, no. I said, what are you doing? I said, you are really cleaning, aren't you? And the next thing you know, he came to me, and he pulled me by my robe lapel, and then he just, you know, sort of slammed me into the wall. And I was like, what's wrong? What's wrong? What did I do? What did I do? And he just flung me around, and the whole nightmare started. And the abuse and the hitting me and punching and slapping and spitting, and it was just a nightmare. And at one point he had me pinned up against the stainless steel refrigerator. And I heard a voice in my head that said, duck, like I'm talking to you, just duck, you know, move. And all of a sudden the fist came to where my eye would have been, and it was so impactful that it left knuckle prints in the stainless steel refrigerator door. And I had been standing there, and I was yelling and screaming for help, and no one would come. And all of a sudden it clicked in my mind to talk about what was happening. And I said, you're holding me against my will. What is wrong? Why are you? And he just kept cursing at me and yelling at me, and he had me pushed up into the bent over backwards over the sink, and my head was in the cabinets, or at the cabinets. And I said, you punch me in my stomach, please. And I had just had an emergency C-section 5 weeks prior. And that triggered the neighbor next door to call for help. She's in her police report. I've never met this woman, but in her police report, it talks about the fact that she heard me say, you punched me in my stomach, you're holding me against my will. And that's what triggered her to call for help.
Dee, some people would think you read these stories on the news. Right. You tell victims what to do.
And then I became the victim. There was a nice sergeant. He was older, and I've been trying to find him. I combed through my police report trying to find his name, but he talked to me. He came in the apartment, in the room where they had me hold up, the police, and he asked. He kept talking to me. I looked at him and I said, I'm not supposed to be on this side of the story. I'm not supposed to. He said, what do you do for a living? What's your profession? I said, I am a news anchor reporter. He said, my God, my God. And he talked to me and he said, you have decisions to make. He said, this could be your life, or you could get out of this. The decision is yours.
We're going to pick up the story with Dee in just a minute. Thank you, Dee, again. Stay with us, because we're going to talk about getting out of an abusive relationship right after the break. Dee Griffin is a familiar face to WJBF viewers, and we're talking today about her personal story of escaping an abusive relationship. And Dee, let's talk for a minute about helping victims get out.
That is the hardest part of domestic violence. You know, you have the verbal, the physical, the mental, the emotional, the financial, but getting out is perhaps the hardest, because you're constantly second guessing yourself, and you're doubting yourself and your decision. Who's going to help you? How are you going to make it? And it's also a very deadly time for the victim.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
The abuser feels like the grasp of control is slipping away. And once the victim gets away, then the abuser feels like, I have no more power. And abuse is about a power. So that's when a lot of abusers turn to murder.
When you are on, if you go to Safe Homes of Augusta or the Cumbie Center or the domestic violence website, they talk about how to quickly escape because your computer, you know, how to quickly get out of that web page, you know, and just whatever, not just to escape the relationship, but just so your partner may not see what you are doing.
And always have your important documents in one place. I have a yellow plastic folder that I keep everything, and I still have that plastic folder.
So you know what to take if you need to get out quickly.
My son's birth certificate, all your documents, put them one place and put them where you can get your hands on them.
You're taking part in a national exhibit that's going on all month in New York City in someone else's shoes.
And that's by Santander Bank, and it's part of their corporate accountability responsibility initiative. For this year they chose domestic violence. It's a house that they have built. It's in the World Trade Center, and you walk up and you see the house with the green lawn and just a regular beautiful house, but on the inside it reveals the ugliness that happens within many walls in the world. It's not just a U.S. problem. You walk through, you see family pictures. My son's pictures are up there, my pictures, my family, my dad. But then in each room, you hear what a victim went through. And for me, the biggest is the kitchen and what happened in the kitchen that day. So you get to hear from the victims, and there are 5 victims from different parts of the country, and they recorded our voices. So when people go through, they'll have the headset on and they can hear.
That must be so impactful. So if you're in the New York City area this month, you can be sure to go through that exhibit. That's very, very powerful, Dee. Before we go, we want to make sure that you know there are excellent resources if you are in an abusive relationship. Dee, read a couple of those numbers for us.
Safe Homes of Augusta, their number is 706-736-2499. Safe Homes has been awesome for me, and I can't say this enough. And it's not just if you need a shelter, if you need guidance, advocacy, a support group. I came back to Augusta and I was desolate. I did not know what to do. I was a shell of myself, and someone pointed me into the direction of Safe Homes. I went to the support group for that Safe Homes has, and they were just amazing. Cumbie Center as well in Aiken. Go to 803-649-0480. And they have a 24-hour hotline, both organizations, and Cumbie Center has been phenomenal over the years as well. But people think domestic violence shelter, I need somewhere to stay, but also for your mental health, you can go for the support groups and the advocacy.
Dee Griffin, you are a remarkable woman. You're a single mother now, but you are a strong woman.
Thank you.
And you are helping so many other people by telling your truth, as you said in that soundbite.
Telling my truth.
You're telling your truth.
Thank you for always being a listening ear. Jennie has had to see the tears and the sobs and the stories, but thank you for being a listening ear. Absolutely. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
You're awesome.
We'll be right back.